Hi there, today I'm going to show you how to do a helicopter flight plan. You're going to need a few things to be able to do this. You're going to need the latest version of your map. I'm going to use a 1/4 mil map, which is the standard thing for helicopters. You're also going to need a ruler, which is been calibrated with the 1/4 mil scale for measuring distances. You're going to need a thing called a flight computer or a Whizz wheel. I'm using a new version of it which has a thing called a wind arm on it. This actually makes it much easier to do wind calculations. You may have heard of wind up method and wind down method, but I'm going to show you how to do it using this wind arm, which means you don't have to mark the flight computer at all. Also on the other side, I'm going to show you how to do distance calculations and true airspeed calculations. You will also need a protractor for measuring headings off the map. If your writing and drawing isn't particularly good like mine, then one of these is actually very handy. This is a NATO stencil, but you can get very similar ones online, and this is going to come really handy when we draw on our map. Also, it's useful to have a thing called a VFR flight log, because it standardizes the way you write things down, and then that's going to make it easier to transfer that to the map. Also, I'd recommend a set of these pens. They're Staedtler Lumicolor Permanent, 0.6mm. You can get them from your favourite air distributor, or you can get them on Amazon for about half the price. So worth digging those out. Also, to wipe this pen off your laminated map, get a bottle of methylated spirit, and then it comes off really well and you can reuse it time and time again. We are going to do a journey around, say, the Cotswold, Gloucestershire area. So you will need your low-level forecast for the time you want to fly. We're going to fly tonight at 1800. And you will need your spot wind chart. These are both available from the Met Office for free if you sign up. I'm going to take you through how to use this to be able to work out what wind velocity and direction you should be using. I'm not going to cover the forecast sheet, so we're actually going to fly tonight at 1800, but looking at this sheet, that's definitely not going to happen because the weather's pretty awful at the moment. I'm going to take you through how to plot everything on the map with all the information you're going to need to do your flight. So this is mainly for helicopters which fly at quite low levels. Today's flight, I'm going to plan it around 2,000 feet. You can use very similar techniques for general aviation planes if you're flying at quite low levels. If you're flying at higher levels, then you really do need to take the true airspeed and things into account. I will show you how to calculate the true airspeed from the calibrated airspeed, but it's not something we do normally in an R22 because the values are very, very close together. If you were flying at strange pressure altitudes or very high or very low temperatures, then it's something you would take into account more. But around this area, it's not something we generally take too much into account because we're actually quite close to the international standard atmosphere. The temperatures and pressures are pretty close to that, so sometimes it's only out by 1 or 2 knots. But if you can hold 75 knots perfectly and you're heading within 1 degree, then certainly take true airspeed into account rather than the calibrated airspeed. Okay, so I'm going to get on now and we will do the map work and see where we're going to go. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at our wind spot chart for today. And we're going to be operating in this area here. So I'm going to be using this wind spot table. If you're actually between two different places, say between these two here, more to the east side of England, then you would actually interpolate the values between the two tables. So say for instance at 2,000 feet, this one it's 180 degrees at 30 knots, and this one is 240 degrees at 25 knots. So you take the difference, which is 60 degrees, and then divide it by 2. So you would be doing 210 degrees, and you do the same for the speed. So the velocity. So it's 25 on one, 30 on the other. So it's a difference of 2.5. So it would be 27.5, roughly, between the two. And that's going to give you a spot roughly in the middle of the two. And it's, again, if you wanted to go between different heights. So in here we have 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 and 10,000. But say you wanted to fly at 7,500. You'd then do the same thing. It's 240 bearing there, 250 bearing there. So that's 10 degrees. So again, it's half the height. So it'd be 5 degrees. So it'd be 245 degrees heading. So you would split it depending on where you are going to go. But say today we're in the Gloucestershire area. So we're going to be using this table here. And we're going to be planning our flight at around 2,000 feet. So we are going to be using this one today, which is 2,000 feet. The wind is at 240 degrees and at a velocity of 25 knots. So it's pretty windy out today, so not really ideal for our pretend helicopter flight. It's also plus 11 degrees at 2,000 feet. So we'll just put a little mark on this one so we know which one we're going to use. And we can then put that in our flight log to start off with. So this is our flight today. We're going to start off here, which is Gloucestershire, my home aerodrome, which is Staverton. And we're going to fly to Hereford. But because that's actually quite a long way, we're going to split that up and find a spot at Ledbury here, which is a grass airstrip. So that's going to be a useful first leg. We can fly from here to here, find our airstrip, and then we can make sure all our bearings and timings are correct before we then do our second stint to Hereford. Then from Hereford, we're going to fly to Great Malvern, and then from Great Malvern, we're going to fly back to Gloucester. Now, so the first thing we're going to do, before we do anything else, is just mark the places on the map which are either going to be our destination or our waypoints. So we have them clearly to start off with. So I'm going to use our stencil. And if you haven't got one of these, then the perfect size is actually the inside of an old CD, where you can mark it as well. So I'm not actually going to mark Gloucester Aerodrome. I'm actually going to mark a little bit just outside the ATZ. This road here, I know, is 2 miles. So that's the edge of the ATZ, which you can see the boundary there. So at that point, we're actually going to climb quite steeply up to 2,000 feet and then fly over a place called Turley Bridge, which is just on the river over here. And at that point, we should be at 2,000 feet at 75 knots. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw a circle around our start point at Turley Bridge. Okay. Now, why am I using a circle or not a line or something like that? It's because when I'm flying around this area, I actually want to be able to see what I'm looking at. So, for instance, there's the river coming through here. There's obviously a bridge going over the top of it, plus some minor roads and a very small town just to the east of it. So, rather than putting big lines over my point, I just circle it and then I'm able to still see under that circle. So our next point is Ledbury. So we'll put a circle around that. And then Hereford. We'll actually head directly for the centre of Hereford, where the train station comes in and all the roads meet. and that will be a good point to head to. And then from Hereford, we're going to fly back to Great Malvern. Again, I'm going to head for a point here, which is a roundabout of several roads, more to the south of Great Malvern. It's just over this big hill here, quite some high ground there at 1,394 feet. So we'll know when we get to the other side of that hill, Great Malvern's going to be after it, and we should be able to find this roundabout without any problem. And from there then, we're going to fly back to Turley Bridge. So now we've got those points, we're just going to use our ruler and mark the circles together. So remember, we're going from the centre of the circle each time, and we're just going to put in a nice thick black line, and we'll make it double so it's absolutely clear. And these pens are also great because they are permanent until you put the meths on them, so it's quite difficult to smudge with sweaty paws in the cockpit. So just finish this one off here and here. So we've got a nice thick double line, then all the way from the middle of Great Malvern back to Turley Bridge. So a nice flight on a nice day, which it certainly isn't today, which is why I'm making this video and not out actually flying it. So that's our route. That's what we're going to do our flight plan to. We've got our wind spot chart, we've got our weather forecast, we've now worked out where we want to go. So now we're actually going to start planning it out properly. So for this, you're going to need one of these things called a VFR flight log. You can buy books of these. You can print them out as well. First thing we're going to do is enter our wind, which is our 2,000 foot wind, heading of 240, and it's at 25 knots. So, and also at that height, the temperature is plus 11. If you were flying a plane and you were going higher, then you could also put in the 5,000 feet wind velocity and temperature. So the next thing we're going to do is just put in our from to's. So the first one will be Turley Bridge. And that will be going to Ledbury. And then from Ledbury, we will be going to Hereford. We'll be going to Turley Bridge. Okay, so now we've got that set up, we can start measuring our distances and headings. But you notice on here we have minimum safe altitude. As we're in a helicopter and we're flying under VFR rules, then we can basically judge that visually. We're going to be doing the flight at around 2,000 feet, which is way above anything we're going to be flying over, except for the bit for Great Malvern. We might increase our height a little bit there to give us extra clearance over that mountain. It was more of a hill there. But I'm not going to put in the minimum safe altitudes. The planned altitude says it's going to be 2,000 feet. Now, true airspeed. So we're in a helicopter. So we're going to be going quite slow. We're going to plan to go at an airspeed of around 75 knots because we're in an R22. I will just do the calc to show you how to do it. And we'll be converting CAS, which is calibrated airspeed, into true airspeed. Now, the way we do this is to use the temperature at the height which was given on the wind spot chart. So what we'll do first is actually set this up for the ISA. So we'll be saying at 0 feet above MSL, it should be around 15 degrees. So that's 0, 5, 10, 15. So if we have that, then our calibrated airspeed will match our true airspeed. And if we look on the gauge, so it's actually very difficult to get this with very low heights and temperatures, we can see that our calibrated airspeed and our true airspeed actually near enough match. The height you're going to fly at, you put in this window, so 0, 1, 2,000 feet, and you line that up against the temperature of the wind spot chart. So it's 0 degrees, 5 degrees, 10 degrees, 15 degrees. So it would just pass the 10 degrees because at 2,000 feet, it's 11 degrees. So then you take your calibrated airspeed. We're going to be flying at 75 knots. And we read that then off against the true airspeed, which is on the outer scale. So it's going to be 75, 76, about 77 knots is going to be our true airspeed today. So it's going to be indicating 75 in the cockpit, but we will actually be travelling at 77 knots true airspeed. Back to our VFR flight log. We can then enter our true airspeed all the time as 77, even though our indicated airspeed is going to be 75. Okay, next we need to measure our track and our distance. But just while we're here, let's put our wind velocity in. It's going to be constant across our area because we're not travelling very far. So it's going to be the 240, 25, 240, 25. Okay, get extra one in there. Okay, so now we're going to measure our tracks and our headings. Let's do our tracks first, and remembering to get the right side of the ruler. So we're on a 1/4 mil map, so we need the 1/4 mil markings. So we're going to take the centre of the circle, the centre of the one at Turley Bridge, and that's pretty much bang on 10 nautical miles. So we will just add that to our flight plan. Distance 10. And then we will do Ledbury to Hereford. Fair enough. So that's going to be pretty much 9.5 nautical miles. So that's going to be 9.5. And then Hereford to Great Malvern. That's going to be 15 nautical miles. Really, we should break that one up a bit more, but I don't want to put too many points in this one today. And then we want to go from Great Malvern back to Turley Bridge, and again that's near enough 10 nautical miles. So finally we put that one in as well. Okay, so now we have to measure our true headings. We use our protractor. North up the map. So we try and line this up with the centre point and then use the grid lines, longitude and latitude lines of the map to keep our protractor aligned with the map nicely. So, and then we've got our point in the middle of the circle. and we work out our first angle, which is 290, near enough. I think 290. I'm going to put in 290. Now, this is off the map, so this is degrees true. Remember, so far everything is in degrees true. Our wind spot chart was in degrees true as well. We will have to convert to degrees magnetic, but we'll do that right at the end. So, as I said, that was 290. So we will put our track in at 290. Okay, we will then do our next one, which is Ledbury to Hereford. Again, line that up as close as we can with the grid lines. And this one's actually 291. It's slightly further over, but not much. But we'll put that in as 291. So we have a little bit of variety. And then from Hereford to Great Malvern, so from the centre line on there, line that up as best we can. And we're going to read this off at a 60, 70, 80, so that's 79. So we pop that in as 79. And then from Great Malvern back to Turley Bridge. Again, line that up as best we can. That's pretty good. That's going to be 140, 150, 160. Bang on. So 160. 160. All these should be three figures, by the way, so that would be 0, 7, 9, just for the completeness. Our altitudes, we said, is going to be 2000. Okay, so now we have our track and we have our distance. We also know our wind. So what we need to do now is find our heading true. So this takes our track into account and the wind into account. Now we're going to use our flight computer, put the wind side, to work out our heading true. So we're going to feed in our track of 290 and also our wind heading, which is 240. And we're going to use the low speed arm because we're using the low speed card. The high speed is on the other side, then we would use that one. Then we need to look up our wind velocity, which is 25. And we need to then cross-reference it with our true air speed, which is 77. So we find 25 on here, and we move the card until 77. Is what it's at here. So that's 70 is that line, 72, 74, 76. So it's going to be roughly in the middle of those two. And it needs to hit this at 25. So these are in 2, so 22, 24, 26, 28, etc. So we need 22, 24, 25 needs to be in the line between those two lines, 72, 74, 76. So 77 in that arc needs to be bang on between there, which is, I think I got it pretty much spot on. So that now, as you see, we've got 72, 74, 76, halfway of 77. So we go through that arc and it's where it crosses. So again, 22, 24, 25. So what we do then is read off this radial where it crosses. So 22,
24, 25 is this radial here, that one there. Okay, we'll just double check that again. So 22, 24, 25. Okay, so it's this radial. So it's 10, 12, 14. Okay, 10, 12, 14. And that's that radial there. So it's 14 degrees to the left. So if it's to the left, you subtract. So we take our true heading and subtract 14 degrees. So that then becomes 2, 7, 6. So I'm now going to repeat that to the others. So our track is 291. Our ground speed is 77, 70, 72, 74, 76, 77. So we're going around here. And again, we're pretty much, we only move by 1 degree. So we can say that's 14 again. So 291 minus 14, 277. Okay, the other thing we do on that, once we've read off our true heading, is we can also read off the ground speed. And the ground speed will be shown through the index dot down here. And I can see that it's pretty much bang on 60, 58. So it's going to be 58. I'm going to put the same for the other one as well, as it's only 1 degree different. So let's now repeat this with our next heading, which is 079. I'm going to move this down now until we've got 77, which is halfway through, meeting up with the 25. So it's 20, 22, 24, 25. So that's roughly pretty much halfway through that one, which is correct. So 20, 22, 24, 26. So it's that radial there. So let's work this out then. So 20, 22, 24, 25. So it's this radial here. So that's 10, 8, 6. Okay, because that's 6, 4, 2, 0. So let's do that again to make sure. So 20, 22, 24, 25. So that's that radial there. So 10, 8, 6. So that's 6 degrees, but this time it's on the right. So we add it. So it goes from 079 to 085. Okay, and then we will read our ground speed off again, which is bang on 100. So, favourable winds. So, now we're going to put in our last track, which is 160. And we're going to read off here 25 again. So 20, 22, 24, 25. And so we need to make that match. 70, 72, 74, 76, 77. And 22, 24, 25. Yep, that's pretty much bang on there. So it's a little bit between two, but it's not too bad. So 22, 24, 25. So let's go with this one. So that's 18 degrees. And again, it's to the right, so we're going to add it. So 1, 7, 8. And our ground speed is 70. So now we have all our true headings and we have our ground speeds. We've already got our distance and we've got our track, we've got our true airspeed and our altitude. So the only things we're missing now are the heading magnetic and the time. So those are the two things we're going to calculate now. Now, on my map, here in the UK, we're pretty close to Greenwich and all things fun like that. So, what we actually have here on the bottom of the map is you can just see here we have the magnetic variation lines. So if we go further to the right, that goes to 0.5 degrees west, and I know if I go further to the left, it goes 2.5 degrees west. So we're going to use the whole digit in the middle, so that's 2 degrees. And remember, variation west, magnetic best, variation east, magnetic least. So with west, we actually add it to our true to get our magnetic. So with our figures, we add 2 degrees. If you were, a lot further away, then your variation may be quite significant. It's only a couple of degrees here, but we will put it in anyway. But if you were over Africa or Brazil, then your variation is going to be a lot more than that. And it does vary, so you always need your latest map to make sure everything is bang on. So variation west, magnetic best, so that's going to become 278. That's going to become 279. That's going to become 087 and 180. So those are the headings we will actually steer in the helicopter to maintain this track. So the next thing we're going to do is to work out the time. So how long each one of those segments is going to take. So for that, we're going to go back to the calculation side of the computer. So to work out our time, we use this index here, which is the minutes one, and we put in our ground speed in here at 57. We then read off our distance on the outer scale here, so it's 10 nautical miles, and we can see that it's going to take 10.4 minutes on the inner scale. Now, we allow that's near enough correct, because if we were flying at 60 knots, then we know that 10 nautical miles would take 10 minutes, because it would be a mile a minute. So we're doing 58, so 55, 56, 57, 58. So it's 10.4 minutes. So let's just fill that one in. Okay, so our next one, our ground speed is still 58. So that's already dialed in. And our distance is 9.5. So again, we read 95 off the outside here's distance. And it's going to be 9.5, 9.6, 9.7, 9.8. So that's 9.8 minutes. When we write this on the map, we're actually going to convert these to seconds. At the moment, we're just going to leave it as units. So our ground speed is 100. So we don't have 100, so we will use 10. And our distance is 15. So we've got 15 here. So that's actually going to take bang on 9 minutes. And our ground speed 70. And our distance is 10. So that's going to be 8.2 minutes. Okay, so now we've got those, we can fill in some of our totals. So we know our distance is 19.5, 29, 34.5, 44.5. So just check that again, do it backwards. 25, 35, 44.5. Distance then is 44.5. And our flight time. So it's 10.4, 9.8, 9, 8.2. So 9 9 is 18, 0.8 is 19 with the 2, so it's 19, 27, 27, 37.4, I make that. Let me just do that again. So 9 9 is 18, plus 1's 19, 27, 37.4. So the flight time is 37.4. Now with the points, point 1 is 6 seconds. So 0.4 would be 24 seconds. So simple as that. So now we have all that information. We can transfer this to our map because we don't want to be looking at this my really dodgy writing when we're flying. So we want it really nice and big and detailed on the map so we can read it easily. So we're actually going to discard this and actually put everything onto the map itself. This is the way we're going to do this. We're going to use our stenciling aim, and we're going to come slightly off track because we don't want to put it in where we can't see it. See what's under it rather. And we're going to draw a series of boxes. So, and this is why we've got all the different coloured pens as well. So, and our last one there. All this is going to be in the direction we're flying the stint. So each time we will rotate the map and everything is going to be the right way up. So there's no juggling the map. We just have the map in the direction we're flying, and it just makes things a lot easier. So now we're going to transfer everything from our flight log to our map. And we're going to use different colours so everything is really quite obvious. So first we're going to put our headings in, and we're going to keep them in black. So our first heading, Turley Bridge to Ledbury, is 278. 278. Our next one is 279. 279. So nice and big, so we can easily read it in the cockpit. And our next heading is 087 and 180. Okay, so those are all our headings. And next, we're going to put our times in. So our first time is 10.4 minutes. So that's, per point, it's 6 seconds. So that's 10 minutes, 24 seconds. So we will put that in like this. 24 seconds. Our next one is 9.8. So 0.8 is 48. So it's 9 minutes 48. Okay, our next leg is bang on 9 minutes. So put in 9. And our final leg is 8.2. So that's 8 minutes 12 seconds. So we can see that then very clearly when we're in the helicopter. Our heading and the exact time it should take. So those are all done. And finally, what we'll also put in is the distance in nautical miles. And we just pop that in the top. So that will be 10 9.5. $15. And 10. So one other final thing we'll do, because we're in the helicopter, is we will draw the wind on the map so that if we have an emergency, we know exactly which way to turn. So we'll just find a useful grid line we can line up with. Keep everything nice and straight. So that's roughly here on top of Colford. So we will draw just a little dot on there. And then line that up. Okay, and our wind is at 240. So it's coming from that direction there. So, and then use our stencil again. And we can draw a nice big arrow lined up with the wind. Just move that up a bit. It's on camera. So 240. Oops. Not the neatest arrow in the world today. So we've got our wind clearly on there, and we will actually write it on there. 240 at 25. So we know if we have an emergency, that's the direction we need to rotate the helicopter to. So we've got a clear arrow there, and we can see we can turn directly into wind. Now that we've actually got that on the map, we can check a few things. So we know with the wind blowing that way, anything heading in this direction is going to be a bit slower than anything heading in that direction. So we've got 10 nautical miles here. So it says 75 knots indicated. That's going to take 10 minutes 24. So that sounds about right, considering this is 9.5, and that's going to take 9 minutes 48. Now, even though this one is 15 miles, we've got the wind right behind us. So we're actually going to be travelling at 100 knots ground speed. So it's only going to take us 9 minutes. And if we look at the wind direction, again, that looks pretty good because the wind is almost directly behind us. And again, on this one, this is going to take us 8 minutes 12. And now we've got a bit of a crosswind. So we're actually steering 180. So we're steering exactly due south, but we'll be steering this way. But due to the wind coming in from this direction, it's going to be blowing us that way. So that looks correct again, doesn't it? So we would normally be going south, but so we'll be steering 180, and the wind is going to blow us over like that. So you can do similar calc on these as well. So we'll be steering 278 to head to Ledbury. 270's here, so we're only going to be steering slightly that way. But because the wind is blowing us that way, it's going to push us right onto track. So we can just use those to verify our figures, and we're quite happy that we haven't made any silly mistakes. So what you should end up with is something like that, which you can then use in the cockpit. So we've gone through from marking our initial waypoints. We've then joined them up with lines. We've then measured the distance between the centres of the circles, and we've measured the headings using the protractor. We've entered all that information onto our flight log. we've calculated our true airspeed from the density altitude, the pressure altitude. We've entered our wind velocity and heading, and we've used that with our flight computer to calculate our true heading. And then we've adjusted that for magnetic variation. And when we calculated our wind, we also calculated our ground speed. And once we had our ground speed and our distance, we could then calculate our time. And when we've had all those figures, we could then draw the boxes onto the map and put our steering heading and the time for each leg and the distance clearly onto the map. And so when we're steering each leg, we can then rotate this in the direction we're flying. So we have all the info required to fly those points. And finally, for safety, we've entered our wind arrow, so we know where to turn in case of emergency. Obviously, this leg, if we have an emergency here, we need to maintain our height, especially as we're going to be flying over here, which is actually 1,300 odd feet. And if we had to do an auto rotation here, then we'll want to be quite high, because we'd only have 700 feet before we hit the ground. And 700 feet to do a 180 auto rotation isn't really enough. It's about 600-700 feet to get round if you're really, really quick. So we'd probably either want to adjust our route slightly to the left to cut down on the high ground, or increase our altitude. So we could go up to 2,500, and then that would then give us 1,300 feet. So 600 feet to do the turn, and with plenty of height left to do the auto rotation to turn into wind. So then we've got everything there. So maybe not the great route choice to go over this high mound, but remember, we're on visual flight rules, so we know where we're heading to. So when we actually get to this bit, we could actually be cheeky and just fly around the side of it for safety, because you can see it all. But if you keep to your numbers, you will end up where you should end up. You have to fly at the constant altitude, and you have to fly at the constant airspeed, which is pretty difficult to maintain in an R22. But it is doable, and you will find you will end up in the correct place. So I hope this was useful. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for listening. If you want to subscribe to my channel, then click on my face.